Hello and welcome. Let's start with South Africa, which is in Trump's line of fire. From slapping 30% tariffs to cutting financial aid, Trump's attack on South Africa has been open and loud, and he is showing no sign of softening his stance anytime soon. Trump will also be skipping the G20 summit in South Africa this year. Instead, he will be sending his deputy, JD Vance, in his place.
Questions on the G20, sir. Is there any update on your plans to attend this year's G20? And then are you saying for next year?
I won't be going this year. It's in South Africa. I won't be going. JD will be going, great vice president, and he looks forward to it. But no, I won't be going to that.
This is a symbolic snub. The US will take over the G20 presidency in 2026. Last week, the U.S. president announced the next summit will be held in Miami at the Trump National Doral Golf Course. Traditionally, the outgoing host closely works with the incoming one, but Trump is disengaging just as he prepares to host one. By deciding to skip the G20 summit, Trump has yet again made his dislike towards South Africa clear. But the Ramaphosa government is still hoping to strike a trade deal with the U.S. Months of negotiations have failed so far, but the stakes are too high for Pretoria to just give up. Which is why South Africa has sent officials to the U.S. for trade negotiations.
Our government is therefore in continued engagement with the United States to secure what we would term a mutually beneficial trade and investment deal. The Presidency and the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition have sent representatives who are currently in the United States, who are preparing for the further formal negotiations with the United States government, which should be taking place in just a few days. They are meeting a number of stakeholders as they are in both New York and Washington, including representatives of the administration, legislators, business people, and a whole number of other people.
Trump has had a tense relationship with this year's G20 host, South Africa, and the country's President Ramaphosa. Pretoria's foreign and domestic policies have drawn sharp criticism from the U.S., and Trump has made his dislike clear over and over again. Back in March, Washington expelled a South African ambassador for criticizing President Trump. Tensions reached a new high in May when Trump turned an Oval Office meeting with Ramaphosa into a full-blown confrontation. The meeting was supposed to reset diplomatic ties, but it ended up further straining it. Trump launched back-to-back attacks on Ramaphosa. Trump alleged that white farmers are being persecuted in South Africa and their lands are being forcefully taken away. Ramaphosa denied all allegations, but Trump went on with his white genocide claims.
Articles over the last few days, death of people, death, horrible death, death. And those people, in many cases, are being executed. They're being executed. And they happen to be white, and most of them happen to be farmers. And that's a tough situation. I don't know how you explain that. How do you explain that? They're taking people's land away, and in many cases, those people are being executed. And in many cases, it's not the government that's doing it. It's people that kill them and then take their land, and nothing happens to them. But we have thousands of people that want to come into our country. They're also going to Australia.
Earlier this year in February, Trump administration also granted refugee status to white South Africans, who are known as Afrikaners. He alleged that South Africa's black government was discriminating against white people by bringing in laws to redress the legacy of apartheid. Now, this includes the land expropriation law and black economic empowerment laws. Trump is also unhappy with South Africa's genocide case against its close ally Israel at the World Court. So Trump has a lot to complain about for his part, Will Ramaphosa's latest attempt to appease Trump be successful, or will it meet the same fate as the previous ones? Now, for more on this, we have with us Patrick Bond, a political economist, joining us live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Great to have you on the show again, Patrick.
Thanks. Wonderful to be with you, Alison.
Now, how significant is President Trump's decision to skip the G20 summit in Johannesburg? And what message does it send about the state of the US-South Africa relations under his administration?
Well, they're obviously at a low point. The only hope is that one of the new ambassadors, a special advisor to Ramaphosa on investment named Alistair Reuters, is actually there now and trying to do some behind-the-scenes trade deal making. But I think two other processes reflect how tense the situation is. One is that the basic themes of the G20, which are solidarity and equality and sustainability, these have been rejected, especially by Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, since February. And I think we should see what Trump is doing with his manipulation of the G20 and sabotage of South Africa's hosting in that bigger context that the G20, he believes, should not be overly broad and should not extend beyond just financial management questions. So he doesn't like climate and he doesn't like public health. And the second factor is that the BRICS met on Monday, and they were supposed to be coming up with collective reactions to Trump's illegal trade tariffs and his trade policy, which is very destructive for China and South Africa at more than 30% tariffs, but especially India and the host Brazil at 50%. But they did nothing. And I think that's one of the problems, is that there's a lot of talk about opposing Trump, but we haven't yet seen real muscle yet come to the table from the BRICS side and from South Africa's side. Like, for example, saying, well, maybe Trump, you shouldn't even be in the G20 for 4 years. Let's kick out the United States out. To me, is the only way you fight back against a bully.
Right. And with the US imposing the 30% tariffs on South African exports and, of course, suspending financial aid, how vulnerable is South Africa's economy to these measures? And what leverage does Pretoria have in the ongoing trade talks?
Well, the main thing that South Africa has is 85% of the world's platinum, plus a large share, about 40% of chrome. And these are the two main minerals exports. And very revealingly, they carry a 0% tariff. That means Trump and his corporates really want those minerals to come from South African mines to the US unimpeded. So that's 0%. And then you have the Afrikaner farmers who make, for example, citrus and macadamia nuts and vineyards, the grapes, the wine. Those are being hit with the 30% tariff just in the last month for the first time. That's very hard. Plus, you've got 50% on steel and aluminium, which has been a very important export. And then automobiles with 25%. Now, those are the basic tariff lines. Devastating. In comparison to what existed before in March. And in comparison to then, South Africa's trade has plummeted more than 67% in some of those categories. Aside from minerals, this is a devastating effect, especially on jobs and industrial output.
Yeah. And given Trump's repeated allegations about white farmers, his stance on the Israel-Hamas conflict, and, of course, the expulsion of South Africa's previous U.S. ambassador, how might these tensions affect South Africa's broader international standing, both within the G20 and with other global partners?
Alison, I recall when in January 2024, just a year and a half or so ago, South Africa was courageous by itself going to the International Court of Justice, as you remind us, to declare genocide was underway. Now it's common knowledge, and every human rights group in the world and many governments are now saying to Israel, stop the genocide. And it's that, let me say, the talk left, the ability to go to The Hague and make a case that has some upstanding moral standpoint, because of course South Africa had its own extreme oppression, apartheid. And that, to me, is where the South African government
Yes.
should be bearing down and not kowtowing anymore to the frankly reactionary and genocide facilitating United States. And I think when we saw Narendra Modi begin to drift off away from a close personal connection to Trump, and we saw Lula get furious, that should have been a signal over the last few weeks that South Africa could do more collectively. But there is a mindset in Pretoria, which is pro-business and let's go and do a deal, no matter how ridiculous. Games of golf, or inviting in U.S. oil companies for fracking support, all these sorts of things that are on the table. It just isn't working so far, and there's no reason to think that it will change matters drastically. And instead, in 2026, it looks like Donald Trump will inherit the G20 and simply ignore all the work being done in South Africa and the year before in Brazil and the year before that in India. It's a deep tragedy that we haven't taken advantage of this opportunity to rally the world on something that's so obvious, just as Israel's genocide is today, obvious that Donald Trump has no place in a G20 or multilateralism when all his intents are simply to come and destroy.
Right. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa.
Thank you.
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
Stands at $36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor,
Hindi,
$30 trillion ka-charge ho.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Fiskali radikali.
Japanese,
4 兆ドル以上も.
Portuguese,
Por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select the language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.